It's been interesting to think about my cycle when I've been in relationship and out of relationship because I didn't track it then. And to see myself with somebody who actually notices my energetic cycles and who's so sensitive to them, he
Hmm.
reflects back to me the changes where he's literally like, "What's going on with you?" And I'm like, "What do you mean? I'm fine." And then I'm like, "Oh, I am kind of acting weird, aren't I?" That has been another reason for me to get like super hyper interested in all of it because I notice how it definitely impacts him. And then it's given us an opportunity to have conversations about like how we support each other through different seasons. The world has taught us some of the most fundamentally useless ways of thinking about success that actually go against our biology when it comes to achievement and happiness, success and peace. We are taught to push through pain at any cost, to use pressure to persist, focus on the goal, and do whatever it takes to get there. This is useful if the goal is to not starve to death. But success by any means necessary comes at a remarkable cost to our future self. Our mantra around here is not a penny from pressure, only pleasure. The More Alive podcast exists to lead us into a new way of achieving and replace outdated advice that threaten the dream life that actually makes us feel more alive. I'm your host, Andrea Crowder, mom, truth teller, and lover of daydreaming, here to help create a world where we all feel more alive. Welcome to the show. Welcome my friend Kim to the show, who's literally like my hormones expert, the person that I call for all things like how to cut energetic cords from my vagina after a breakup. And I think I actually mentioned you on my last podcast with Keith, where I was like, I did a Yoni steam after. I'm sure I mentioned you at some point, but it doesn't matter. But welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I also think of I don't know if I should say this, but when you were concerned about having the UTIs there
Oh
too, I was
yeah,
like, I'm coming over with the herbs.
I know. Literally, actually, I just got my first UTI in a long time this week. And I was like, I've been doing so good. Kim gave me like, you guys, I historically have had like really chronic UTIs, especially when I have like a super active sex life. And which is what is true right now in my amazing relationship. And
Celebrating you for
yeah,
that.
thank you. Thank you. I went through a season of despair for a while. So, but yeah, like when Keith and I got together, I was having like a UTI every other week at first. And then Kim came over and I'm like, wait a second, you know all the vagina things help.
So, in regards to what you're moving through right now, just do a steam for 10 minutes, no longer than 10 minutes with the herbs that you have.
Yeah.
And, you can do that a couple times throughout the week, and that should help with that.
Okay, I'm gonna do that today because I got it Sunday and it keeps coming back. Okay, you guys. So let me tell you why I'm bringing Kim onto the show today. So everything that I do always comes back to how do we have really healthy energy, and that's our number one resource above money, above everything else is our time and is our energy. And Kim has really actually helped me in a season of refining that energy because she started this very, very cool tea company and she hadn't launched yet. And she's like, hey, do you want to test my teas? They're for your four different cycles within the menstruation cycle. And I was like, oh, yeah, so interesting. I wasn't a big tea drinker, but what I noticed was that when I was starting to feel bad, especially in like my luteal phase, which by the way, now I know the word of that. I'm like, I'm really learning like do I pronounce it right? Follicular?
Follicular. That's the time right after your period. So like
Right.
around like day 6 through
That's where I'm
13.
at now.
Me too. Me too.
Yay.
So good time for this conversation because we're
Yes.
like more in our masculine energy,
Hmm.
and we're able to like speak more clearly instead of being with our emotions.
Hmm.
In the first half of your phase, follicular and ovulation, we're thinking more clearly. We're more direct. We feel I have more energy. You have more energy today?
Oh yeah.
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 Compared to this past weekend, I was like, Adam, I'm not leaving the sofa. as you
S-
know.
Right. So that's interesting that you say that because I mean, I just learned that part about the masculine energy and like the mental clarity because last week I was like, something tells me this week I need a what? You're the only thing that was like non-masculine energy that I left on my calendar was this interview
Mm.
because I was like, I need to clear this next week and I want to do back end projects. I want to have conversations with my team about things that normally I kind of want to avoid unless I get to play with highlighters and colors and fonts and like the thing that I'm most gifted at. But I didn't realize that about like you being able to dip in a little bit more into your masculine energy.
Yeah, because we're more logical thinking in this half. So I'm just going to rewind a little bit just so the listeners understand
Please.
a little bit where we're at. So our cycle is not just our period. Our cycle's every single day of the year, 365 days. And our cycle goes from the first day of our period, day one of our period is day one of our cycle. And then we are going to count forward, however many days it is, until we have our next period. So, no, we don't all have a 28-day cycle, and you probably know that within your own cycle. It doesn't have to be 20 days. A healthy cycle could be anywhere between 26 to 34. So, if your next period, say on day 30, that means your cycle is a 30-day cycle. Within your cycle, you have 4 phases. Menstrual phase, which we're all very familiar with. That's when we have our period, or we're bleeding, right at, and that's our inner winter. So that's when our hormones are at their lowest, our main sex reproductive hormones, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. Then what Andrea and I were just talking about, we're both in our follicular phase. This is that time right after our period. And then moving into ovulation. Ovulation is when we're fertile. So it's a shorter window, usually around days 13 to 17. No, we don't all ovulate on day 14. So I'm going to get on a little soapbox, but like, don't follow those free period apps, because you can miss your fertility window if you're trying to get pregnant, or you could get pregnant if you're trying not to get pregnant. And
Mhm.
then our luteal phase. Our luteal phase is a little bit longer. Sometimes it's called our premenstrual phase. We
Mhm.
especially know how that feels that week before.
Mhm.
So those are our 4 phases.
I'm glad you said that. See, I'm already learning so much. This is why I brought Kim on, you guys. Kim and I met at a bar, and she comes up with this guy that she's dating, and I look at him. I'm listening to them engage with each other, and I look at him, and I'm like, what's your sign? I'm like, you just have like such interesting energy. You had like such soft energy. And Kim was like, who's this girl who's asking the guy I'm on? You guys were on like what, your third date or
Yeah, it's
something?
our third date. Yeah.
Yeah. And she's like, who's this weirdo asking him his sign? Because like down in Southern Florida, it's just all normies here for the most part. Not all, but like we don't have a really big spiritual community in Fort Lauderdale, at least more so in Miami. But yeah, Kim and I became instant friends at YOLO, at YOLO Bar. If you've ever been to Las Olas, everybody knows YOLO. It's where everybody goes to hang out. And then we literally have just been friends ever since. But Kim is a hormones expert. So like give
I just
your yeah.
my description, I just say a women's hormone health coach. Sometimes, depending on the setting, I'll say a medicine woman, because
Hmm.
I actually start with Western medicine. What a lot of people don't know about me is I've been in the Western medicine world for what, 14, 15 years now as an occupational therapist. I have a master's in that. So I understand that Western medicine world a lot. And then I'm now trained in functional nutrition specific for women's health. I've done Tao and tantric healing arts for women. So that's where the Yoni steaming comes in. And there's so many
Hmm.
different practices. We could have a whole other conversation around these other practices, from using crystal eggs, Yoni eggs, and crystal dildos to remove energy that we have trapped within our womb space, within our body, because
Hmm.
that stuff does impact our hormones. It does impact how we're feeling, our fertility, our sex lives, all the
Hmm.
things. So I'm so like well-rounded. And then like bringing in just lifestyle management, some
Hmm.
things really from a holistic approach. So overall, I want your hormones to be balanced. I want you to be feeling good. I want your periods to be as regular as possible. Ideally, it doesn't have to be 28 days, but if your regular is a 30-day, then that's where you're at. And through all that, you're just feeling healthy.
Right.
And this was me this past weekend. Andrew knows I've been in a couple accidents, and it's actually impacted my period. I'm
Hmm.
symptomatic now, which I've never been. The doctor is trying to tell me I'm perimenopausal. I'm like, you haven't heard what I just said to you. I was in an accident. That's what she told me. But
Wow.
in the end, what I'm trying to get is I felt like shit this weekend and I was on
Mhm.
my period and I just didn't want to be social.
Mhm.
You know, I didn't come out to Andrea's party because that's how shitty I felt. And that's not me. And my ultimate goal is for my clients to feel good, whether it's day-to-day life in with their family life, in their sex lives, with their kids, work. I want you to be thriving in all areas of your life. And a lot of it comes back down to your hormones.
Okay, so we do need to have two whole conversations because I do want to have the whole conversation around like vaginal health and sex health, especially around like trauma and healing, because I've
Hmm.
had so much healing in that regard. But let's stick with the hormones. So how do people know if like what would be a symptom that people would be experiencing that maybe they don't realize has to do is rooted in their hormones?
Yeah, there's so many things. And I think it especially depends in what us women we're cyclical, not only in our cycles, but in our life. So whether we're in our, early fertile years, our 20s, 30s, going into perimenopause, reaching menopause and postmenopause, the symptoms are going to show up so differently. But first, I'm going to say menstrual cramps are very, very common, but they're not normal, especially if they're the cramps that you're calling off work, you're canceling on plans every
Mhm.
single month. So like I really want to stress that. Like that's a red flag. Look into it. If it's 1 month, like I had cramps this month, I know what it was associated with, but I'm watching for the next month to see what's happening type thing. So
Mhm.
menstrual cramps, heavy bleeds. Heavy bleeds is a period more than 8 day or 7 days. More having to change your pad or tampon more than every 2 hours. And now if you want to just be clean, feel clean, right?
Mhm.
Especially if you're a woman that wears pads. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about you're changing your pads or tampons because you're bleeding through that type of heavy bleed. Clots bigger than a quarter. Those are like some big ones. Headaches, breast tenderness, bloating. A lot of our hormone issues actually start with our gut. So that's like one big thing. And how many of you go to your doctor and your doctor's like, so what have you been eating? Like that's
Mhm.
like the first question.
No.
That's before I even like one of the first things I have my clients do is give me a breakdown of what they're eating 2 or 3 days during the week and during the weekend. And I don't care if you're eating salads or you're eating 20 donuts. I just want to see what you're eating so I could kind of see what might be going on a little bit. And then on top of like testing. But so bloating, brain fog, loss of concentration, vaginal dryness, pain with sex. I'm trying to think of some other things too that might not seem weight gain, of course, weight gain, or sometimes if you're losing weight too fast, missing periods, bleeding between periods. Even if you get ovulation pain, sometimes that could be a sign. There's like the list could go on and on. I'm like,
Wow, I'm like checking almost all those boxes for me.
but especially with perimenopause, like it gets, or and going to menopause, like so many things kind of get brushed off. One of my girlfriends is 53 and she goes, Kim, I'm feeling forgetful. And I was like, and she just got her labs. I'm like, let me look at your labs. But she forgot we were on when I went to Asheville and she had them with her, but she didn't end up showing them to me. So I need to get them from her. But like being forgetful, not even feeling like yourself,
Mhm.
just feeling off that disconnect could be hormone issue. And women in perimenopause, going to menopause, do experience that.
So what's the difference between perimenopause and menopause?
So perimenopause is when we start shifting into those years, and perimenopause could go on for like 9 years. I'm technically in perimenopause right now. Perimenopause starts at age 35 and goes until you stop getting your period. So menopause is when you don't have a period for 12 months. At least. So like when you're kind of at the end of your menstruating years, you might have one period every 7 months. You might have a period and not have anything for 7 months and you have a period again. You're not quite at menopausal, but perimenopause is that time leading up. What doesn't get talked about much with perimenopause is you hear so much about the estrogen dropping, but you know what actually drops before estrogen is your progesterone. Progesterone can drop about 75%. So, and
Wow.
progesterone is the hormone that actually peaks after we ovulate in our luteal phase. If your hormones are balanced and healthy, and I call it like our natural antidepressant. It's
Mm.
like what makes us feel good, makes us feel calm. It helps with our sleep. So think of women that are listening right now that are in their 40s, having trouble sleeping, getting up in the middle of the night. There could be
Mhm.
other things like blood sugar imbalances going on, but it could be that progesterone. So perimenopause is that time when, our hormones start to drop naturally, and men go through it too. It's called
Mhm.
andropause, like their testosterone starts to drop. But of course, we don't hear about that so much. We just hear about us women being crazy or something.
Aw.
So it's and a big thing I say too is like think of in our perimenopausal years, 40. I think a lot of women start really feeling symptoms about 44 and on. Some might feel it earlier. But think of what's going on in your life. A lot of you have children, could still be like children in the house, right? Still living in the house. You could be at the peak of your career. You're married or maybe recently divorced. That's a big
Mhm.
stress. And then you have aging parents that you might be taking care of. That's a lot on your plate.
Mhm.
On top of your hormones going through like this massive shift. So, a big thing to help is managing your stress,
Mm.
watching your stress levels.
Dang, we're the power team, huh?
Right.
I've got that part on lock for myself. But yeah, the rest of it is and it's so confusing and you're right. You go to the doctor and like the the information isn't helpful, at least from what I've experienced so far.
It isn't. And I'm going to speak about myself personally. So I went in for my lab work two days ago. And I get asked this question a lot, and it could be helpful for your listeners. Like, how do I advocate for myself? And of course, like if you don't know this stuff, it does make it a little bit harder because you don't know what labs to be asking for and stuff. So that makes it a little more difficult. But I think the biggest thing is to come into the doctor's office with your symptoms. And if you could be very specific, like my first day of my period, I feel this way. A week before my period, I feel this way. This symptom started up 3 weeks ago, type thing. Just getting very specific. Ask questions. I know the doctors don't like that all the time, but ask questions.
Mhm.
And really, at the end of the day, if you walk out of the office and you still don't feel comfortable, you're not married to your doctor. Go get another one. I'm telling you, I'm not going back to this doctor
Mhm.
after what I experienced on Tuesday. So I was saying these symptoms kind of came on since my accident, the period stuff, which I wasn't concerned about. I was just, I haven't seen her, so I was just telling her. So first she says I'm in perimenopause, right? So that's why these symptoms are coming on. And then second, she goes, well, since you're in perimenopause, she was really pushing for me to get my hormonal work done that day, which is day 5 of my cycle. So your ideal days to do any lab work on your hormones is day 19 or 20. If you're doing your estrogen levels, you could do it on day 3. But so I was like, no, it's day 5 of my cycle. I want to wait till day 19. She goes, you're in perimenopause, so it doesn't matter. Your hormones are all over the place. That's what she's telling me. And I was like, no, I'm coming back on day 19. Like I was just very adamant about it. But I hear this from women all the time, how the doctor
Mhm.
just gaslight you and like brush it off. So
Mhm.
yeah, ask the questions. And especially here in the US, it might be having another copay, which sucks. And for some people, paying that extra $100 might be a bit of a deal breaker, right? But just really being sure with what you feel inside with the symptoms that are coming up and being okay with that and knowing that you could go to another doctor.
Mhm. Yeah, my experience, I remember years ago, I was like in my mid 20s and I was having pain when I was ovulating. I would sneeze and it would hurt so bad. And I went into the doctor and they just brushed it off and said that it was nothing. And then I went in after having an ovarian cyst burst. And there was just like nothing to be done about that other than like it's already burst. And then later on, I end up having a fibroid, and they're just like, oh, we'll just surgically remove that. And I remember thinking, like, I just want to talk to a couple of other people. And how I handled that was by doing lab work, balancing my hormones, acupuncture, and then
Hmm.
RRT. I handled it from the stress perspective. I like went into and I did some like RRT through the lens of hypnosis sessions around any energy that was being stored in my universe in my uterus. And I was clearing those traumas that were being held in that tissue. And then I was consistently doing the acupuncture along with the hormonal protect, which I just realized has DIM in it, which you've been telling me to take. And I'm like,
Yes.
oh, I have been taking DIM for really, I stopped taking it for whatever reason, but I'm like, oh yeah, that actually did help. And the fibroid went away and I actually let go of, luckily that doctor who was supposed to schedule my surgery kept not calling back. And then I was like trying to find another doctor who was going to do the surgery. And then I went in and he just gaslit the fuck out of me. And I walked out of there that day. And I was like, I will not let that man slice into my body. And luckily I didn't have that surgery because I didn't end up needing either of them. The fibroid, I've had 2 scans since then and the fibroid was gone.
That's so
But
exciting. I'm like,
yes.
that's really exciting. And I think that's such a powerful story to share because fibroids is very common.
Hmm.
And I actually have a client right now too that came to me about them. And she's a nurse and she knows me as an OT. She's like, Kim, I need your help because I'm not getting surgery. And so like you're a testament to that. Like you can do lifestyle changes. Acupuncture is very powerful and could help with that. And so the DIM, just so people know, DIM is basically cruciferous vegetables. So like your broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, kale, collard greens, what they help do is those vegetables help break down estrogen. Yes, we need estrogen, but if we have too much estrogen dominance, you may hear that term. What happens, it's like almost becomes toxic in the body, right? It's too much. And so what DIM does, because it's compressed cruciferous vegetables in a pill, it helps with detoxing the body, detoxing the liver of this estrogen. So, but the one thing you want to be careful is because estrogen dominance could show up in 2 ways. You actually have too much estrogen in your body. You're producing too much, or you're not excreting it, or your progesterone's actually low. Remember, I was saying perimenopause, the progesterone tends to drop. And I mean, it could happen in your 20s as well. But if your progesterone's low, the ratio compared to to estrogen makes it seem like you're in estrogen dominance, but really your progesterone's too low. So you would take a
Interesting.
different approach. The DIM may not probably won't help with that because your estrogen's actually okay. You got to address the progesterone to boost that up to make that ratio back to normal.
I'm curious what all labs I've done and what my progesterone was. I never thought to look at that. But I did have my acupuncturist looking at it and she was helping me a ton. So I'm sure she would have I know she did have me actually do a hormones test and looked at that. I just probably didn't know to look for that. But yeah, so one of the other things though that I feel like I need to adjust is like I had what looked like probably endometriosis, which
Mm.
I have my period usually for at least 7 days, if not 8. And then like I'll have a tampon, a pad, and period underwear all at the same time because like just one of those never cuts it. I'll go through a tampon in an hour at the most.
Wow. I knew
Yeah.
you always told me you had heavy bleeds, but I didn't realize it was like that heavy.
Hmm. Yeah, it sucks.
So, and there's endometriosis, well, is connected a little bit to autoimmune, but also high estrogen levels with that one as well. Something we've talked about, and you mentioned at the beginning, is Yoni seems so powerful with that, with actually helping and breaking down the fibroids or helping with the endometriosis. It's such a beautiful story. One of the women I did training with when I did my ancient Tao and tantric practice training, she has endometriosis, and the doctor told her she'll never get pregnant. So at the
Oh.
end of we're like in our last session, and our my mentor was like, share like your biggest breakthrough in these last 9 months. And this woman's like, I'm pregnant. And she had a strict Yoni steaming protocol along with like the Yoni eggs and working on the energetics and everything. And she was pregnant. And we got to do
Wow.
like a whole ceremony with her about a year ago up in the Catskills when we did our retreat. So
Oh,
these practices are really powerful. I mean, you don't hear about it in Western medicine, but our ancestors were using them
right,
hundreds of years ago.
right. I know. Well, yeah, like it requires a whole nother education. So I understand why like it's not common and big pharma tends to dominate, which is sad and disappointing. And also, it's encouraging though, just because you and I are having conversations like this on this public podcast feed that anybody can access for free. And the shareability of information is just, it's never been easier. And
Hmm.
so we get to share the best practices of what are actually working beyond just going into a doctor, especially when we don't know what questions to ask. We don't know, like you did, to tell our doctor no that we don't want to do hormones tests. We don't know how tired they are. I'm sure like not all of it comes from like people not having our best interest at heart, but I know it's harder in the medical industry now to make money, and they have hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loans and like high overhead and all of that. So like I have compassion for that industry there completely. And it's been unfortunate that I've rarely actually received genuine good help when I've gone the traditional medical route when I've had any of these issues.
Yeah. And
Gosh.
I feel for you. And every time I hear a story like yours, I'm like, and this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. Because I was
Yeah.
that person when I lost my period in 2017, when I was doing bikini competitions. I was amenorrheic for 8 months. And the only thing the doctor had to offer me was the pill, which I refused. And in that time, I kept hearing stories like yours from so many women. And I was like, I want to be a change for this. And that was like my deep dive into women's health from there. I was like,
Mhm.
this is my purpose. And I like got goosebumps just talking about it right now. I'm like, this is
Yeah.
why I'm here.
Yeah. The witch doctor that everybody goes to. You're the first call, not the last.
The womb witch.
The womb witch, that's right. Okay, so let's go back to our cycle then and talk about like what are a lot of the common issues that I hear from my community is like low energy,
Mhm.
low focus, and then forgetfulness. Like, what are some simple ways that we can, I mean, start with how we utilize the best energy within the cycle, like you were just
Mhm.
talking about. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm gonna kind of just gonna move through our cycle, starting with the period. And if you have any questions in between any of this, Andrew, just pipe in. So as I was saying at the beginning, day one of our cycles, day one of our period, hormones are at our lowest. So if you, most of us kind of have an idea of when our period's going to be, that's not the time to schedule your big meetings. Try not to schedule anything that you got to do a lot of talking. You got to be high energy in front of a lot of people, especially, from a business perspective. If you can even take off, days one and two of your period, or if you have to go into office for something, or if you have a job that you're going to office, see if that's a day that could be remote and you're at home and it's just like a little bit more you and it's more low key. But then even from like family perspective, right? Some things I recommend to my clients, like and let me just say this, tracking your cycle for about 3 months will really start giving you an idea of how your cycle is. Andrew, did you ever, I know you bought my book, The Womb Wisdom Journal. Did you ever use it?
No, and I was literally just thinking that. I'm like, where is that journal? Because I do actually want to start tracking things. I'm starting to get a feel for things, but
Yeah. Once you actually started journaling in it every day, I would love to see because I know you're like
yeah,
very curious now and you're starting to pick up things,
yeah.
especially like with your relationship with Keith. I'm really curious just because every day I have you reflect for like 3 months.
Mhm.
So I created a journal. It's called the Womb Wisdom Journal. And the reason why I created it is because I kept hearing women saying, I feel so disconnected. I feel so disconnected. So one of the questions that I ask, you get to journal on every day is, what did I learn about myself?
Mhm.
And you're going to see as you like move through the cycle. So for an example for me, day 19 or 20, that's that shift like coming out of ovulation energy into the luteal phase energy. Ovulation's high energy, like I'm superwoman. Luteal phase is like I'm going into my inner fall. Things are starting to slow down. I'm so irritated in the morning. It always
Mhm.
happens day 19 or 20. By noon, I'm okay. So I know if I'm short with anyone, it's totally me. And I also try not to be around people. Like that's just kind of my time. So like these little things you'll start to pick up and you're like, wow.
Oh my God.
So
Keith tries to be so perky to like lift me up. And I'm like, I actually need you to come down to me. I need you to be less perky right now. I need you to be gloomy. What did I say? Gloomy and something else, whatever.
but grounding energy for that time is like appropriate.
Yeah. grounding
So
energy, but please do not try to take me to the top of the mountain.
yeah, no,
It's like
because
too
and
far out of
I'll talk
reach.
about that in a second. We actually are meant to be like more
Mm.
grounded. Like, so if yeah, he just brings it down a little bit. And like ladies, at this point, bring your husbands and boyfriends and male people in your life to listen to the podcast now because they'll learn something.
Yes.
And I do like to educate men around this too because it could be a game changer in
Mhm.
relationships. Even if you're a single father, it can be
Oh
very
my God.
helpful
Yes.
raising a daughter. So yeah, so I say to my clients, like, once you kind of know when you're going to get your period, you could even meal prep a couple days before. So you're not worrying. Husbands, partners, you could cook for the women during
Mm.
that time. Take the kids for the afternoon because we do need our own time during that time. Like if you feel
Yeah.
tired and you want to rest, you're not being lazy. Like this, that's what your job is to do during that time is rest. So take that nap if you need that nap. And if you go back to like what our ancestors did, like that's what the red tent was. Women just like came together and bled together. And we actually are more connected to spirit during this time. So you may notice that you're having more vivid dreams. So,
Yes.
maybe journal in the morning just to see what is coming up, sit in meditation. And as we are bleeding, so we're shedding our uterine lining, we're actually we're detoxing, but we're also doing an energetic detox too. So what we don't need New Year's resolutions. Every month is a new start for us women. Every cycle. What do you want to release? What are you bringing into your next menstrual cycle? So just like letting that go during that time.
Mm.
And then, so that's our inner winter time, right? I know I'm from Canada originally. Winter, it's like snowy and there's no leaves on the trees and it's quiet. That's what us women are supposed to do.
I love this because we, especially in a world like today, we're so overstimulated and our calendars are full. We're overcommitted. I hope people in my community are feeling that less and less when we have this core value within the community of we don't do things from obligatory energy. But one of the things that I wrote down is like as a massive value for me is like planned spaciousness. Because otherwise, number one, I start to feel resentful when I don't have it. The overstimulation makes me irritable in seasons where I don't necessarily need to be irritable. But also we need time in order to think about things. We need time in order to be in this place of receptivity. And we say like we get our best ideas if we'll actually give ourselves time to like go on a long walk or whatever. But to have your period when you already want to be still anyway, to use that for some more like spiritual rituals. I love that. Like low candlelight. Like I'm one of those
Hmm.
people like just cuddle me, but don't really talk that much.
Yeah, no, me too. I'm like, just let's just keep it easy right now.
Yeah.
But I like how you said creating stillness because one thing I do say is like how you bleed is how you set your tone for your next cycle. So what I
Mm.
mean by that is if you're trying to like be ovulation Miss Superwoman while you're having your period and really your hormones are at their lowest and your body actually naturally isn't producing that energy, you do that month after month, you're going to have burnout
Hmm.
and you're going to be cranky.
Hmm.
So why not take 3 days to yourself, honor your body? And I have like come to like love my period. Like I love those 2 days. I know some people find it's too witchy and weird and gross, but I actually like one of my favorite rituals is giving my plants. And if you have a backyard, you could put in the backyard, but giving my menstrual blood back to Mother Earth. And I'll like sit, meditate, do my journaling, and then I just like have a whole ceremony around it.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't
And
know if I'm
my
gonna go
plant,
that far.
I know some people, my cousin's like, Kim, I've learned so much from you, but she's like, that one's a little too much. But I don't know if you come see my plants, Andrea, they're thriving. I'll tell you that.
To each their own. But yeah, you're not wrong. Like the plant you gave me died. So
Oh,
I know. It has to be self-watering or it doesn't survive. Poor thing. But yeah, maybe. Look, I'm probably not going to go there, but I like the intention and there's people on this that just felt like an activation inside of them that are listening right now where they're like That actually does feel nurturing. The idea of like nurturing the earth back as the earth gives so much to us, that does really entice me. So maybe I could do the ritual differently.
Yeah, come in with a different perspective, right?
Yeah.
And you're saying the nurturing, and this makes me think of what we were just messaging back with on Instagram. So I posted my bison chili, my famous bison chili. And there too, like when you really start connecting to your cycle and knowing like what foods support you throughout your cycle, you
Hmm.
just know what season or what phase you're moving into. Like I always crave bison, either like that third week premenstrual phase or like while I'm on my period. So I love that chili. Even my
Mm.
dad, when I go home to Canada, my dad's like, "Are you gonna make some chili?"
Oh, wait, I would definitely want the bison recipe. Can we
Yeah.
link that below for everyone?
So,
Bison chili.
yeah, I'll put it in. I just gotta say, I don't measure the spices. I'm like, so like
Okay.
just measure to taste, but I could give the ballpark of what's
An
in it.
ish.
And then if you want it extra spicy, then you're throwing in more cayenne and
Got it.
chili powder. But the reason why I bring that up is because there's so many benefits, and it doesn't have to be chili, it could be a warm soup, but just having something warm, we're meant to have
Mhm.
warmer foods in the luteal phase and, definitely on our period because it's grounding
Mhm.
and the warmth helps with stagnation. So it helps with those cramps, it helps with the heavy bleeds because it's creating blood like warmth to that to the
Circulation.
body, so it's creating that circulation. And then the bison, or if you want to use grass-fed beef, even the beans in the chili, all
Mhm.
full of iron, right, to replenish us from what we're losing while we're bleeding, especially if you're a woman that does have a heavy period. And then all the spices, like so many of those spices, the
Mm.
cumin, the coriander, even the garlic in it, all helps with digestion. They're anti-spasmodic, so helps with like cramps. Like there's just so many benefits to the food in what we're eating that are going to support you throughout your whole cycle. But those are some of the foods that actually help when you're on your period.
I love that. Keith is gonna love this. He's always looking for an excuse to make stew or something like that. So I'm gonna be like, baby, every period I need bison chili. He's gonna be on
And he
it.
has to Reiki it.
Yes, he will. My boyfriend's such a freak. I love it.
Andrew's boyfriend and I were doing Reiki on the
For Fourth
hamburgers,
of
4th
July,
of
yeah.
July.
He bought like Walmart burgers, and I'm like, I'm not eating those unless you Reiki them.
Yeah.
So we did.
So yeah, so then moving into our inner spring, which is our follicular phase. This is where Andrea and I are in right now. So like I was saying earlier, this is like around days, like as you probably even start feeling that inner spring coming in around day 4 or 5 of your period. Like you're
Mhm.
still in your period, but you're like, ooh, I got energy again, right? So that's your estrogen like rising up. But follicular phase is, yeah, kind of that day 5, 6 until we're ovulating, come into ovulation, say around day 13. So as I was saying earlier, like that your estrogen's rising, you're feeling like you have more energy, and you probably feel all of a sudden like, oh, I got more patience. And there
Mm.
too, like I was saying, being in the masculine energy. So we're thinking more logical. If you think compared to period to ovulation, your first half of your cycle, and then from ovulation till your next period, so that luteal phase, and you might have to like think a little after like listening to this, but like when do you get upset with your partner more often? Probably
Mm.
the second phase, right? When are you a little more snappy at work? Probably in the second phase. And it's because we're more in this logical thinking. Like I said, we could speak clearly, we're thinking more clearly, we're more energized, we're more motivated, we're more determined. The patience. So even with the children, if you have children, this is a good time to start new routines. So
Mhm.
if you're in the potty training time, I know potty training is not a 2 week thing, but you want to start in this time.
Yeah.
Starting even
How
any new
funny. We literally just started re-potty training all the dogs because they all had like a potty regression as soon as we like started bringing them together. We started it right at the beginning of my follicular. I can never say that word.
follicular.
Follicular phase.
Just call your inner spring.
Thanks, inner spring. Yeah. We started at the inner spring. Go us.
So, and this is probably a better time because if it was like a week earlier, you would have been like pulling your hair out.
No, in fact, Keith and I had our very first fight, and I call it that very loosely because we just had a moment where we felt tension. But because I was getting so frustrated with the dogs and he just wanted me to have a better attitude and I got mad at him for wanting me to have a better attitude when I couldn't.
Just blame it on your hormones.
Oh,
But
yeah.
now you're at a good time to do that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so bringing any of those type of things in, and then I think you were saying something like now's the time you like doing the back end with your I don't want to call them staff, with your team. Yeah, with your team. So this is a good time to do like the team building or, grouping together to see like what's happening with the business. This is a good time to do that. If you want to negotiate whether, it's for a raise or some type of contract, this is a good time to do it because you're more in that clear mindset and you're gonna come out feeling more determined and like, no, this is what I deserve.
Is
This is
it
what I
like
want.
good time for project planning as well?
And we're more
Okay.
creative during this time. So your Instagram content or your emails or whatever you need to be, whatever you're creating in this time. And if,
Launching.
yeah, this is the good, like from now until you ovulate. So this then moves into ovulation because ovulation, we peak with our estrogen, which is our inner summer. Think we're so connected to nature. When is nature most fertile? Summertime. This is
Mm.
when we're fertile as well, right? So our estrogen's peaking, our testosterone's peaking as well. That's why the sex drive goes up with the estrogen, or sorry, with the testosterone. The estrogen makes us juicy. The testosterone peaks our sex drive, but it's because we're meant to create during that time. Now, if you're not trying to create a baby, use that sexual energy to create whatever you're calling into your life.
Yes.
That's where sex magic comes in. We'll save that for the next podcast to
Oh
go
my
with the
God.
other
Yeah, we have to,
stuff.
we're just gonna hit end at the end of this one and just keep going. Part
but
one, two, and
but
two.
it's just like that's just how synced we are with nature and the full moon. If you are a woman that ovulates like with the full moon, Mother Nature's fertile then too because there's light all throughout the night.
I think as you're talking about this, the cyclical patterns of nature and how much we often try to resist how our bodies are built. And when we are craving rest, but we don't want to take it because we think like I'm going to miss out on something, nature never worries. Like
Mm-mm.
nature doesn't miss, and nature isn't trying to plant seeds during the winter, right? And yet somehow it all works out and there's always a harvest. And but when if we did try to plant seeds during the winter when the ground is frozen, then we're really upset when that doesn't bear fruit, right? But if
Yeah.
we went, it's the same thing thinking about like driving a car, where it's like if you're going 20 miles an hour, you're not going to try to put it into fifth gear because fifth gear wouldn't work properly. We're just going to grind gears, or it's going to feel like you're pushing really hard on the pedal and it's just not going anywhere. Most people are like, Andrew, I've never driven a stick. It's all automatic. Just imagine with me.
Nowadays.
Like it doesn't work that way. If we actually took the tool that we had and we worked it the way that it works, game over.
Yeah. It's so true. And there's life, of course, there's always going to be some like little hiccups, right? But
Sure.
life is just going to feel like it's flowing
Yeah.
so much better
Yeah.
in all areas,
Absolutely.
not only just your period, but just like with everything. So,
When I stopped resisting like the natural flow of energy, that's when my business just really exploded.
mm,
Yeah. Money, money, money. So if you didn't already have enough motivation to actually just feel better, see the universe dumping buckets of money into your account.
sounds lovely, right?
Yes.
Raining money in your inner summer.
Yes, every time. Oh, funny story. You're gonna love this. My CFOs their names are Matt and Matt, so we call them the Matts. So the Matts text, and he's like, I've been analyzing the numbers over the last like X months, like 8 months or whatever. And he's like, I notice that during like usually the third to last week or the last week of the month is typically when you make the most money. And maybe it's just that's how your launch schedule goes. And I'm like, no, that's just based off of our periods. We're all synced up. They're like,
That's
oh,
amazing.
they literally could see on the calendar when we make the most money. And I'm like, no, we just have a month-long cycle. And he's like, okay, got it.
I love that. But that there again just shows how powerful our cycle is
Wow,
and
yeah.
how much it influences like our day-to-day life.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I love that.
Hmm. Okay.
So we just got one more phase left. So after ovulations are inner summer, everything's peaking. And this is actually even like the big time if you're like trying to gain weight, muscle weight. Like this is when you have your hardest workouts, right? Because testosterone, our building muscle, our hormone, it's at its peak. We're just going to feel more energized. And then like I said, our luteal phase is longer. It's gonna, run from about day 17 until we bleed again. And so it kind of has two phases to it. At the beginning, like around days 17, 18, 19, you still might feel like a little bit that high energy of ovulation. But then as that progesterone peaks and then estrogen starts to drop and testosterone drops, and then as everything starts to drop right before your period, that's when you start feeling that shift in energy again. Like maybe you're getting moody, just not feeling as confident. You mentioned this like Keith being high energy, you're just being like grounding. Like that's such a good description. It's our inner fall. Think of fall time. You like want like hot apple cider or you want your soups, you just want warmth and a big blanket. It's the same type of thing as we're coming into our luteal phase.
Mhm.
So I know it gets a bad reputation this phase because we're crazy. And that's why I called my tea the wild woman tea because we
Mhm.
we're like wild woman, but we're really the bullshit detectors. That's like kind of when the
Mhm.
veil comes up. So this is when we're in actually our feminine energy. We're more emotional. So that stuff that you been maybe thinking, we're more sensitive to it, or I don't know, it could be a partner, someone at work. You're like, I feel like they've been like just telling me bullshit. And this is a time you're gonna really see through it. Might not be the best time to have the conversation because that emotional feminine is gonna come out, but like keep it in mind. And then when you come back into your follicular phase, when you're more in your logical mind, have the conversation. It's gonna come out better.
Mhm.
But during our luteal phase, this is like outside of being a bullshit detector, this is a good time to do audits. So whether it's finances, anything to do with your business, I
Ooh.
sometimes do this. Like, do you notice that week before your period, all of a sudden you're like spring cleaning in the kitchen, like you're like cleaning cupboards out and stuff. This is you kind of getting ready to nest, getting ready for your period. So you might like that's you doing like your audits. So like,
Interesting.
what do you need to get rid of out of your closet that you haven't worn in 5 years?
Yeah, what's taking up energy?
And what's taking up energy in your life?
Yeah. Ooh, I love that. I'm
Yeah.
gonna start scheduling my financial audits for, just like subscriptions and like I try to do all of that stuff as regularly as possible. I'm like, yes, that's a great idea.
I'd
Because
love
I
to see how
kind
that goes for you.
yeah, yeah. I also need a lot of hugs during this phase, but do not try to touch me sexually. If we're gonna have sex, I will initiate. Like,
And that's a like I love that you're saying that because I know we didn't like tap into I didn't talk too much about how our sex lives actually change like as we move through the cycle as well, but it does make an impact. And this is the time that you do more say foreplay and massage than
mm.
actually having sex, of course, unless a woman wants to have sex.
I always do, but it has to be on my terms. And what I noticed is like if he tries to touch me sexually, my body instantly rejects it and is like, no.
Mm.
But if he's like Keith is the first guy that's ever like really truly tried to understand and has gotten it. And he is always like, she's not into it. What is she into? And he just looks for like, what does she need versus like getting upset that
Hmm.
like thinking that I'm rejecting him. We did have some early phase where he didn't know my cycle. He didn't understand it. He learned it. We kind of actually really learned it well together. And that was so fun and like nurturing because I've never had a guy that's ever been interested or cared. So, but the what he would do is he would just be like, okay, what is it that you need? And he would offer to massage me. And and as soon as he didn't want to anymore, it was almost like his neutrality around it really turned me on. And then I'm like, okay, we're having sex
You're like, now
now.
I'm ready. But
So now he's learned the trick.
but the thing is, naturally, I mean, this just with sex, like us women need more foreplay anyway. We're not 0 to 100
Yeah.
most of the time, like men are. So
Mhm.
that's just him like warming you up, and we need more of that
Mhm.
during our luteal phase.
Extra. Yes. It's so interesting. It's almost like manifestation at its finest. As soon as you don't care or want or need it anymore, it like seeks you.
Like, actually, I changed my mind. And, even just like on this topic around sex, because the next phase after luteal phase is, menstrual phase. And a lot of women don't like period sex. Some do. I actually like period sex.
Huge
Uh,
fan.
yeah, I'm a huge fan. And I know men are like, ew, a lot are. Thankfully, my last one wasn't. No problems there. But there's many benefits to it. There's so many benefits. Like having a good orgasm releases oxytocin, not oxycontin, oxytocin. And that's the bonding. So if you tend to be a little more tension, like with you and your partner during that time, you're actually going to feel a little more relaxed. It could help with the relationship. And it also helps with cramps. It could help with cramps. It could help with headaches if you're feeling that. It could help boost your mood. So there really is benefits to it. And I always say, like, what does the woman want? Like, if you're like day two, you know, just having a heavy bleed, probably not, but you might not want to do it that day. But maybe day three, you're ready for it. And it can
Mhm.
be very beneficial.
I have actually found that I have my best sex on my period, even in the earlier days, because you're right. It's that like bonding energy that you get. And it's like such a heart opener for me.
Hmm.
Like I feel the most heart connected, which is like creates like full body orgasmic type of experiences. And I think it's actually the best sex out of all of the sex. I have more sex, of course, during ovulation. Luckily, Keith has like a really healthy sexual. This poor guy's gonna be like, wow, you really talked about all our sex life on this episode.
Sorry, Keith, I initiated a little.
No, he's so open, thank God. But yeah, that's like 3 times a day. I'm like, he becomes like my sex slave.
Nothing wrong about that. I'm all for it.
No, 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 he's happy. He's like, finally. But no, I'm like, I wasn't really a big period sex with any other partner, but like this, because Keith and I are like so connected from our heart space and like we're so in tune with each other intuitively, it's actually my favorite. I think it's when we actually feel the most connected. Okay, so I love the twist that all of this took. You mentioned foods for all of the seasons, I think, except for ovulation.
Yeah. So ovulation is our inner summer, right? And think of like summertime when it's hot, especially here in Florida, when it's really hot, like you're not wanting soup or like some heavy, like, I don't know, rice dish or something in the middle of summer, right? We tend to eat more fruit and even think of the fruits that are in season, right? Or peaches and cherries and stuff more in
Mhm.
season in the summer and salads, right? So you tend during ovulation to have more cooling foods. So
Mhm.
our salads, our fruit, citrus fruits are full of vitamin C. That's going to help with support ovulation in the ovaries. Even eating foods high in omega-3, so like salmon, is going to help to support your ovaries, especially, if you are trying to conceive, you want to, make sure that you're ovulating each month. So those are like the type of foods that you would be having during your inner summer ovulation.
Okay, so close us out with talking about the teas and the Yoni steams. Like, why did you create this company in the first place, and how do these teas individually support?
It, yeah. So thank you for bringing that in. Ironically, I had my download about a year ago, and I was finishing my Tao and Tantric Healing Arts. I was at a retreat, and I did combo, which is a form of like a plant medicine, and I just like came out and I was like, I'm gonna rebrand. And Sacred Womb Cycles is the company name because what we're talking about today, right? Not only are we cyclical each month, but we're cyclical as women as we move through our life.
Mhm.
So that's where the name came. And then as we are talking today, like our hormones are changing throughout our month. And because of that, different foods, different lifestyle practices get to shift with our hormones to help support us at our best, right? So I was like, tea is just like I got the download to have the tea, but then when you really sit and think about it, like tea is just such an easy thing to like add into your life because how many of us already drink tea? How many of us have like these green powders and juices and you're shaking and you're like it's clumpy, it's just
Mhm.
it's a lot, right? So I got the teas and each of the teas are created to support each phase of the cycle. So for example, the menstrual blend is called Restore, right? Because we're restoring, we're replenishing, and it has ginger to support digestion. How many are you bloated during your
Mhm.
period? Cinnamon helps with our blood sugar levels, and it's very warming, right? Remember saying we want
Mhm.
warm foods, so it's a warming. Because our estrogen levels are low on our period, we're more sensitive to blood sugar spikes. So cinnamon actually helps with that. We got licorice root in it. There's dandelion root. Both of them support digestion and detox, right? We're detoxing. So having these herbs to support those phases and moving through all of them, follicular phase, that one is called awaken. I said in our spring, we're starting to, feel like we have energy again. There is erythro root, which helps with cortisol levels. And so think if, we're a little bit lower energy during our period, it's going to help like with that little bit of a boost. Well, there's also red clover that's going to help support our estrogen levels as well. And then tulsi and nettles. Nettles, I throw into my protein shakes even. I'll just throw it like some loose leaf because nettles is just, it's like your multivitamin of herbs. It's just
Hmm.
so full of nutrients.
I didn't know that.
And yeah, and it's so crazy. Like I've been drinking it like Kool-Aid lately, just the way I've been feeling.
Mhm.
So yeah, each phase I've created the teas to just support where your hormones are at. And just to make it easy, if you're not tracking closely, you drink one of the teas for 1 week. So follicular phase, you'll have it for like that week after your period, ovulation for a week. Ovulation is called creatrix because, like I said, we create whatever we want during our ovulation phase. And then the luteal, which is wild woman for a week as well. And that's a
Mhm.
very grounding tea. There's a lot of root in it, a lot of roots. Root is
Mhm.
very grounding.
I notice that I forget to go to my teas when I'm feeling really good, but when I'm not feeling really good, I do not forget. Like, where's the teas? Especially as I go to my luteal phase.
Yeah, and
Uh,
tea's just very warming. And so no judgment. I know a lot of women like to like go for that glass of wine before bed, but that wine's like actually disrupting your sleep, might not be helping the hormones as much. So, maybe just trying to shift to a tea
yeah.
and seeing like if there is a change with that. And maybe I'm being a little biased. Andrea, I don't know if you've tried them all, but like I think they all taste pretty good. There were some herbs.
Yeah.
I created them with a certified herbalist.
Mhm.
And just I knew what I wanted, but I wanted to make sure the herbs that I was picking actually like infuse into water because some of them don't infuse into water as
Right.
well. So she gave me some recommendations. One, for example, cramp bark is really good for supporting menstrual cramps, and she suggested to put it into the luteal phase one, but it is so bitter. I'm like, I can't drink this. So I actually
Mhm.
pulled it out of the tea. So I wanted to make sure they all have their own flavor. Ovulation is like more fruity, like
Mhm.
it has rose hips and goji berries in it, just like summer. So I did put a lot of thought into it so that one, of course, I want it to support and be like a medicine for you, but energetically, so it's supporting you as well.
It's fun hearing you talk about each of them too, and thinking in terms of like going to them out of necessity. But when I do have higher energy, if I tend not to think about it, like how could I make that more of like a fun and flirty ritual versus like me just going because I feel bad so that I can still get the additional, because I do want to try it and do it for like an entire month and notice a difference and see how things start to improve over the course of. of an entire 30-day cycle or 28-day cycle. Mine's usually 28, 29 days actually. But
So two things come to mind when you say that. One, I do want to say they do taste good chilled as well. So if it's just something you want to take with you, like when you're going down to the beach,
mm,
just throw it in with cold water and have it with cold water. And just like a little pro tip, if you want to say, like I'm going to share is, you could put the herbs in the water, especially if it's going to be chilled. Put it in like in the morning and then say drink it at night or put it in at night
mm.
and let it infuse and you're actually going to get more of the medicine out of the herbs.
Oh, I love
So
that.
so from that perspective, especially here in Florida, right? Like we don't always want hot tea. And then the other thing is just like you have a meditative practice or if you do any journaling, maybe just bring the tea with you and just incorporate into other rituals that you're already doing. We call that habit stacking.
Yes. Keith already makes like infused
Yeah,
tea that
yeah.
he keeps in the fridge. I'm like, why haven't I just given him these? And I'm just gonna be like, I'm gonna want to have more sex if you do it by this day in these cycles. And he's gonna be like, got
Well,
it.
and you know what? Saying that, he can drink them as well. So like
Oh,
my
fun.
my cousin, my cousin bought them, or she asked me to bring her some when I went back to Canada. She's like, I got my husband drinking them and he loves them.
Hmm.
My mom's postmenopausal. She's 68 and she drinks them. Like she doesn't
Wait,
have a
talk
period.
about your mom and like her yoni steams and all the
No.
things.
So we'll talk about, so I have one Yoni steam. I have one Yoni steam that I am selling, and this is the one I just call, it's a very gentle one. It's going to support basically any woman. Like it's just your standard steam, right? But if you do have something that you're concerned about, like fibroids, endometriosis, vaginal dryness, or anything, DM me and I could create something specific for you, just like your doctor prescribes you specific medicine.
Mhm.
So my mom is 68, and she came to visit me here in Florida in February. And she's like, I just came back from the gynecologist and he's retiring, but he wants me to stay on with like the medical group because he's concerned that I have vaginal atrophy, which is the thinning of the inside of the vaginal wall. And I know sometimes you gotta take it with a grain of salt. And my mom was like, I don't know, he's concerned about cancer. So I don't know, like I almost want to like talk to the doctor and be like, can I have a little more detail? But anyways, and my mom does struggle with vaginal dryness, but not exterior or vulva, but internal, right?
Mhm.
And she does have compounding hormones. And so I was like, you know what, mom, come to my room. So I set her up for a yoni steam practice. So yoni steaming is taking the herbs that we're drinking with tea, just like we would tea, but I have different mixtures or blends. And you take those herbs, you put it on a pot. You could set your intention right into the pot. And so think you have like all the elements of earth. You got the water, you got the air, the steam, the air, you got the herbs, which is earth, you got the fire, the heat, and you create this sacred practice. So and then you have your intention. So that's all happening with the yoni steam. So I bring my mom, do the steam, bring her back to my room, set her up. And I said, just steam for 10 minutes, gave her space because you basically, you're not wearing underwear. You sit over the pot and you put either a big blanket or you could wear a cloak, because then you kind of create like a sauna around you. And so my mom did two steams while she was here in Florida. And I said, so mom, if I send some herbs home with you, will you do it? And that was February. By the time I went home in April, she asked for more. I went back to Canada for my dad's birthday. She asked for more herbs, and she also said her vaginal dryness and her itchiness and like a little bit of stinging had basically gone away, and she felt better than being on her bioidentical hormones.
Mhm.
And I'm going back to Canada. I don't even know if you know this, Andrew, but I just booked to go back to see. I'm going to the mountains. Actually, my parents are going to pick me up in Calgary and we're going to go spend the weekend in the mountains. I just need
Fun.
to be with family and be in nature with everything
Mhm.
that's been going on.
Mhm.
The first thing when I booked the flight, my mom goes, can you bring me some herbs?
Aw. God, that's like more special than anything when you get to help your own parents.
Yeah. And I think that's the most powerful like testimonial. Like I'm like always like I get like so excited. I think I get more excited than my clients sometimes when I see them win.
Mhm.
And I'm always so happy for them. But there's something so special to get it from your mom.
100%. Gosh, if I
Yeah.
could, have results like that with my mom and my work, like that would be everything. I do have one more question related to our cycles. What about exercise?
Yeah, so exercise, I know I know it kind of moved in and out. So exercise, I was saying like ovulations, that's what was the time to do like our heaviest workouts. And then going into the luteal phase, so that's premenstrual, you could still doing your strength training. So maybe not high intensity like our HIIT workouts, but doing more, you could still do more strength training. But during our period, maybe go to yoga, go for a long walk, or just do nothing. So try not
Mhm.
to, especially if you're feeling tired, like listen to that. Try not to like push like this boot camp or HIIT class or cardio
Mhm.
dance, like those type of things. Like try not to push that during that time. It's like just like I was saying earlier, like if you're trying to push those long work nights on your period, it just sets you up for like feeling tired later on a cycle. Same thing with your workouts. And then moving into your follicular phase, as you feel that energy come up, like that's when you could start, hiking or doing cycle class, like the more a little more intense classes again. And I know some people are like, well, I feel like I have more energy on my period. I'm like, if you feel like you're going to do, like you have the energy, maybe do a light workout. Sometimes, on day 3, I do have some energy and I'll still go to the gym and do
Mhm.
maybe a back day. Cause for me, I feel like a back day is not as like strenuous compared to like a leg day or
Right.
something. But it's really at the end of the day, it comes down to listening to your body. And that's one of the things in my journal, the womb wisdom journal, just putting your hand on your womb each morning, just being like, what do I need today?
Yes.
Just
I've been
checking
doing that
in.
for years. Like people used to ask me, what's your morning routine? What's your routine for this? And for like the last 7, 8 plus years, it's been to put my hand on my body and ask myself, what do I need? And then I
Hmm.
just follow it and literally like following that inner wisdom every single day from what projects I should work on, when I need to rest, when I'm ready to run has changed everything.
Yeah,
Hmm.
so powerful.
Game changer. Okay. Well, we have to have you back on and talk all things sex.
All right, I'm
And
ready.
so we'll link everything you guys in the show notes so that you can, number one, just message Kim and thank her for sharing all of her wisdom and for following this path because this isn't how you started. It's really like your soul's calling and like you answering that soul's calling is so special to be able to witness. And I want to see more women do that. I want to see more of humanity do that, but especially women because we do this, like we change our lives and then we're like, okay, who needs this next?
Yeah.
So you've like the amount of teachings that you just gave us all today should we have had been a paid masterclass.
Well,
So
thank
thank
you for
you.
that. And I'm always happy and excited to have these conversations. So, to any of the listeners, yeah, feel free to reach out. And if you have any questions, don't be afraid to DM me.
Yeah, and if anybody needs a special Yoni steam for like a bad breakup, Kim's your girl.
I got
Speaking
you.
from
I got you.
speaking from personal experience.
He'll
If
be
you
gone. And I got other practices too. You didn't get into the Yoni de-armoring yet, and we'll talk about that in the next
Yeah, we're
podcast.
gonna have to have like that sounds like it's related to part two. All right. Thank you, Kim. I appreciate you. Everyone, please go over to Kim on Instagram, say hello, say thank you. And here's the one thing that I know for sure is the information shared in today's podcast is not just for you, it's for a friend. So please grab the link to this, go share it with someone in need. If someone's looking to get pregnant, if someone's dealing with hormones issues, we mentioned so many symptoms. I don't know a single friend who couldn't listen to this today. So I know the one thing that we're good about in this community is we all know sharing is caring, and that is such a love language to be able to grab another woman and give her something that could really support her. And I just know today's episode is absolutely one of them. So thank you guys all for sharing. And don't forget to send us a review. I literally never ask you guys to do that, but I'm going to ask you today. Yes, review. Thank you. Love you. Bye.